Welcome to the Writer Groupie podcast. I'm Kim Smith, the writing guru, bringing you discussions, insights, and insider details on planning, producing, promoting, and profiting as a writer. This is a podcast by writers for writers. You can find out more about Writer Groupie at www.writergroupie.net. And here's the next episode of Writer Groupie. And welcome everybody to episode 65 of Writer Groupie. Tonight my guest is Thom Reese, and you guys, I gotta just read this for you. Thom is multi-published, and I do mean multi. He's with Speaking Volumes, that's his publishing company, who graciously set up this interview for me. Thom is the author of The Empty, The Demon Backlash, Dead Man's Fire, and Chasing Kelvin, as well as a short story compilation. And he's here tonight to chat about writing and the writing life. Welcome, Thom.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm so excited to be able to chat about writing and your books. And if I'm not mistaken, I read somewhere that you've even produced something like a radio program?
Yes. I was the sole writer and co-producer of 21st Century Audio Theater, which was a weekly audio drama radio program that aired here in Las Vegas, where I'm located. And that was full cast audio dramas. I wrote the scripts, we casted the people, brought actors in, and then my wife, who is a wonderful musician and composer, composed all original music to go along with those episodes. And basically, it was like if you were thinking of a TV episode with minus the picture. And that was a weekly radio program. And my publisher, Speaking Volumes, actually has released many of those episodes, as well as asked us to do additional ones, which are all available on CD and MP3.
How fun. How fun. Well, are you for hire? I'd love for somebody to do that for my mystery series.
We'll
I always
talk.
said it would be a great movie, but I can't get Hollywood interested.
Yeah, that's a difficult thing.
It is, you know. That's what everybody wants to do, though. They want their book to end up being optioned for a movie, because that's just, I guess that's the next level. Once you've written it, published it, and, you know, it's been out in whatever format it was ever going to come out in, next step up is Hollywood.
You know, anytime I do any type of personal appearance, book signings, or what have you, people will always say, are any of your books movies? I think that's just what people think. If you're a successful author, your books must be movies.
Exactly.
And that's not necessarily the case at all.
That's true, but, you know, for the longest time, whenever you would introduce yourself as a writer, people would look at you like, a writer, really? Have you written anything I've read? You know, that, well, who published you? They, you know, well, they don't ask who published you, but they're like, what have you written?
Right.
They always think you're famous if you say you're a writer.
They do, and that's not the case.
But it feels good when they ask.
Sure. And then they say, have you written anything that I've read? And I say, I don't know what you've read.
Yeah, exactly.
I hope I have.
Yeah, I hope you've read it.
Right.
Well, listen, I just want to make sure, the Demon Backlash, did I mispronounce that?
Backlash.
Okay, well, as everyone knows, I'm very Southern, and I do have a tendency to butcher things, so I had to ask. Backlash. Okay, the Demon Backlash.
I don't think anybody has ever pronounced that correctly.
Well, good. I feel better. I'm in good company. Listen, Thom, why don't you break the ice and give us a kind of an overview of your writing and the writing life and your journey and how you got started doing all this stuff.
Okay. You mentioned the radio program. In a lot of ways, that was kind of the icebreaker for me. I always have written. I didn't really consider it a career option early on. It was just something I enjoyed doing. And then when I look back, wow, I was writing my own comic books when I was in high school, and I was writing little movie scripts and getting my friends to do, you know, movies with me, you know, just backyard movies, and writing short stories. And it just kind of always was there at some level. And then eventually I thought I need to start writing books. And I started pretty much pounding my head against the wall, learning the process. The very first complete manuscript I came up with is nothing that I ever want the world to see, but I learned how to write a book through that. So it served its purpose. It was good for that. And, that's just off in a cabinet somewhere where it never needs to be seen. And then the next book I actually wrote was The Demon Bakash, which became my first published book. I beat my head against the wall for a while trying to get that published, and another one, The Empty, which I wrote soon after that. I was shopping them both at the same time. In the meantime, I thought about, well, I'm not getting published yet. What other options are there? And I thought, let's think outside the box. And one of the things I was always entertained by were the old radio dramas, like The Shadow and what have you. And I always thought it'd be cool if there were contemporary ones, which there are, but they're pretty hard to find. So I started investigating what it would take to launch an audio drama radio program. And I had some acting experience. I trained with Second City, and I knew a lot of actors from there. And, I had my writing, and then my wife is a wonderful instrumentalist and can do all the background music. And then she also is very good with engineering as far as recording engineering and everything. And I know how to direct people as far as acting and stuff. So we thought, we can do this. So I started talking to radio stations and what have you, and we came up with a contract and had it happen. And we launched the program, and that really was kind of a door opener because Kurt with Speaking Volumes heard about that program and said, wow, we do audiobooks, and these audio dramas sound like they might be a good thing. Send me a couple, I'd like to hear them. So we sent them, and he said, yeah, let's start publishing these. And so then I said, great. And then, so he started by publishing the audio dramas. And then he contacted me and said, what about doing some novelizations of these? And there was one ongoing series within it, and then a lot of standalone episodes, which were different characters. So the short story collection that I have, which is called 13 Bodies, 7 Tales of Murder and Madness, came out of those standalone episodes. And then a couple of my novels, Dead Man's Fire and Chasing Kelvin, were actually adaptations of longer stories with ongoing characters there. And then I said, well, I've got this book, The Demon Bakash, that I've written. Would you like to take a look at that and see if you'd like to publish that? So he said, send it, and he liked it. And what do you know, all of a sudden I had a multi-book contract with them.
That is so fantastic. And that was your first publishing experience, and it's been a really good one.
Yes.
I was going to ask you how you found Kurt, but he's been wonderful so far as, helping me out with guests for the show here recently. I've had a lot of people from his publishing company to contact me, and hey guys, if you're out there listening, please contact me back. I'm waiting to put you on the calendar.
Kurt's been fantastic to work with, so yeah, I'm very appreciative of Kurt and Erica over at Speaking Volumes. They're fantastic.
Yeah, it's hard these days to know what you're getting sometimes when you're looking at publishing companies.
It is.
And I mean indies. Obviously, traditional publishers, the big 5 or however many's left in New York now, everybody has a general, an idea of what they're getting through those publishing houses. But there's an awful lot of indie publishers out there, and sometimes you don't know what you're getting. So it's always wonderful to find a good one, to be able to talk to the authors that are on staff with that company, and to hear good things. I mean, I love to refer publishers, excuse me, to indie authors who are looking for a house to belong to. And so, Kurt, thank you so much. I just want to say thanks again for sending people to me.
He is wonderful. And let me add one thing with that, too. Shortly after Kurt accepted The Demon Bakash, I had an offer on another book from another publishing company. And I kind of thought, well, maybe I should offer that to Speaking Volumes. But then I thought, it wouldn't be a bad idea to go ahead and let this other publishing company have the other one and be able to compare and contrast, because that way I could see what was good and bad. And I did regret not just going with Kurt with that book right out of the gate. That other experience, I won't go into it, and I won't name the publisher or anything, but it wasn't a great experience. and Kurt was so much better to work with. I did eventually end up getting my rights to that book back, and Kurt has since published it.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. That's a real testimony to the, the working relationship at Speaking Volumes. So
Absolutely.
I don't mind plugging them at all, and so I'll also have the link to Speaking Volumes in the blog post that will accompany this video. Now, a few of your reviews have called your work horror. Some says thriller, some say mystery. But I want to ask you what you think about your specific generalized art here. Where would you expect to find yourself on what shelf in the bookstore?
They would not know where to put me. And that is the truth. And the reason all those reviews say different things is I walk a tightrope. And I title myself a speculative fiction author. And speculative fiction, for those that don't know it, are horror, fantasy, and sci-fi. I almost always have some element of one of those in a story. There are also usually elements of thrillers in most of my stories. So there's some element that's supernatural, something that's fantastic, or sci-fi, and elements of thrillers all in there. And one book can be classified sci-fi, another horror, and it's all me. And if you read enough of me, you'd say, yeah, I get that. That's where he is. But it really is walking a tightrope, and I am hard to classify, which probably drives bookstores nuts because they don't know what to do with me. And whenever I have a new book, Speaking Volumes, they're, well, all right, now what category do we call this one?
Well, and to me, it's not a bad thing. I don't think that authors today should pigeonhole themselves too much. And I'm an indie author. I mean, I do everything myself.
All right.
And I have romance, I have fantasy, I have mystery. I just write whatever the muse says to sit down and throw out there. And so I just think that it just gives us a lot of ground to move any direction we want to. So
it makes it hard for somebody to market me because I'm not easily categorized. They can't just say he's horror, he's sci-fi. But it also, what I do is I try to write what I would want to read.
Sure.
And I read all those different things. And so I try to write stories that would appeal to me. And I think there's probably other people out there that the same type of thing appeals to. So there's a niche out there somewhere.
There is. But, like I said, I think it's okay. I think that there's an awful lot more authors today who do that. They cross genre lines. They mix and they match and they mash, mix, match, and mash genres together. And there's really nothing wrong with it. And I think readers are beginning to be totally accepting of that. So that's not a problem as far as most readers are concerned anymore. It used to be because everything was in a bookstore, a physical bookstore, that you had to stay in a genre line so that they would know where to shelf you and that your fans would know where to find you. But that's not the way it is anymore, really.
No, the whole industry has shifted, and there's a lot of great opportunities out there, and there's some opportunities that have gone away, too, for the same reason. Whenever something shifts, there's some give and take.
That's true. Somebody wins and somebody loses, but there's always going to be somebody winning something.
Oh, yeah. And, if you're smart and you stay on top of things, you can make it work for you, even if it's, going out of your comfort zone and changing.
That's right. You got to be flexible. Today's market, you got to be flexible.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, listen, I'm curious to know, what are you working on right now? What is your most recent work?
Okay, I guess that's two questions, what my most recent work is and what I'm working on. So my most recent work is this one right here, which is The Infusion of Archie Lambert. That came out just this past spring. And this one is about a 45-year-old cancer victim who has just weeks to live. And his father is a leading researcher in neuroscience and has come up with a way to infuse the brain energies of one person onto the brain of another. And there is a brain dead 12-year-old boy. He was in a near drowning incident and was brain damaged in it. And so they infuse Archie Lambert, the 45-year-old cancer victim's brain energies, his soul, so to speak, onto the brain of this young boy. And so he wakes up as a 12-year-old child. And, then things get weird after that.
So, tell us more about the infusion of, what was the title?
The infusion of Archie Lambert.
Archie Lambert.
Yeah. The infusion of Archie Lambert. So he's been infused into the body of this 12-year-old boy. It's in a small Midwestern town. The parents of the boy do not know what has happened. The doctors tell them that he came out of the coma that he was in. And so there's legal things. Obviously, this kind of procedure is not approved. And so he's forced into this life of trying to pretend like he's a 12-year-old boy who has amnesia. But the thing is, something came with him when he came into that boy's mind. And something's happening. And he wakes up in strange places, and strange things start happening around town. And so there's all of this going on. Also, he ends up going to the same school as his daughter.
Oh, boy.
And he had been kind of estranged from his daughter because he and the wife had been divorced, and he hadn't seen his daughter in a while. And now she doesn't know who he is, but he's trying to rebuild some sort of relationship as her friend while all this weird stuff's going on that may be quite dangerous as the story goes on.
Wow. That's awesome. How in the world do you come up with that kind of a storyline? That's phenomenal. That would make a great movie.
People always ask, where do you come up with your ideas? And that's a hard thing to answer. I think most writers, you have a radar up, and you're always thinking of story ideas. And for me, that one, the genesis of that, the germ was just, you ever have a bad day and you just think, wow, I wonder what it would be like if I could just start over and, if I could go back to being a teenager and then, would I take the same path and where would it lead me and all that kind of stuff.
If I knew then what I know today.
Yeah, and I think most of us would take the same path or something similar.
True.
Because there's a lot, even if you have a rough life, there's some good in it that you don't want to give up.
That's right.
But that's where the germ of that happened. And then I took it into kind of a science fiction. Well, what if you could infuse the brain energies of one person onto another, and just went from there.
That's really phenomenal. I love that. I'm going to have to get that story because that sounds like one I'd really be interested in reading.
Thank you.
Okay, so one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, in today's content-rich environment where we are absolutely bombarded on every side from authors selling books, what do you find to be the most difficult thing as a writer today?
I think the biggest difficulty I have is balancing my role as a writer and my role as a marketer. I'm not with Simon & Schuster. I'm not with Random House where they have these huge marketing budgets and can put you out on a book tour and pay for advertising. Speaking Volumes is a wonderful small to mid-sized independent publishing house, and they do what they can. They do great with what they can, but they don't have a huge budget for no-name authors like me. And so most of that, for most authors, probably 95 or 99% of authors out there, pretty much all of the marketing or the vast majority of it lands on their own shoulders. And I am not the type of person who likes to talk about myself. I'll talk about my books, I'll tell you about my stories, but I have a hard time saying, look at me, look at me, look at me, me. That's not my personality. And I would much rather sit in my room and write another novel than spend a whole lot of time talking about me and marketing me. And I enjoy doing interviews because we're talking about books. I enjoy that type of thing, but I really have to force myself to spend the amount of time necessary in marketing, in getting the word out, just that kind of constant, always trying to put things out in front of people. That's not my gift. I much more enjoy writing itself.
I am the same way. To me, the writing part is all I've ever wanted to do.
Hmm.
And when I used to be with a traditional house. It was a small house. It wasn't New York, but um, for the early 2000s. And then when I got my rights back to my work and I decided to go it solo, to do my indie thing,
Right.
I realized that there are some beneficial aspects of being with a publisher, and
Hmm.
one of those being, you have editors, you have cover artists, you have formatters, you have all those things at your disposal, and you can
Absolutely.
focus a little bit more on the writing aspect. However, nobody, even New York published authors, nobody gets away from the promotion aspect. We all must promote.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's what I mean by content rich environment out there is so many people out there screaming, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book on every social media platform, on
Yep.
every format out there, to the point where it's even making me and probably you and others like us feel even less like promoting. We feel like, okay, I don't want to be that person.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't want to be that person. I try to avoid it. And I'm sure you go on Facebook and any site that is supposed to be for readers, book lovers, or, you name it, come up with a title that's supposed to be for book readers, not book writers. And you go on there and all there are one after another of authors promoting their own books. And I don't know that anybody ever looks at those sites other than the authors long enough to go on there, post something, and get off to the next site and post something about their own book. And I I don't even go on those sites anymore because I don't think that I'm reaching anybody other than other writers who really aren't there to look for my books. They're there to post their own. So I always try to find some other avenue. I use Facebook. I use Twitter. I do a lot of different things with my Facebook page other than talking about my books. And then I occasionally throw in something about my books. And I try to pepper it in there, but not become, a clanging cymbal that everybody goes, oh, that's all he does is talk about his books.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I've just come off of a promo tour for the first book in my mystery series, and I feel like that, you know, you have to be a horn blaring for some point, at
Yes,
some
you do.
level. But there
Mm,
comes a time when you just can't keep going with that. You can't
right.
just do that every time you come on social media and every time you are doing anything online. It just can't always be about buy this book, buy this book, buy this book.
Mhm.
So I'm totally with you on that one. There is a fair amount that has to be done in order to promote a book, but you
Absolutely.
just really have to draw a line because when they say social media, they mean it. It's a place. It's a place to be social. It's to build
Absolutely.
friendships and relationships. It's
Yeah,
not necessarily to be selling people. So fine
exactly.
line we have to walk there.
Right. And I try to respect that. I try to respect the people that are out there and not become a nuisance to them. I want that relationship. I want to interact with people. And I believe in the long run that will do what I need to because if people feel they have a relationship with me and it is genuine, it's not me just trying to sell them something,
Right.
then organically at some point they might go, you know what? I've never bought one of Tom's books. I need to check this out. And, so that's how I do it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's the right way. I think it was Gary Vaynerchuk who said that marketers ruin everything for everybody
Yeah,
because once
they're
they get,
necessary though.
well, they are. I mean, and we have to be a marketer at some point in our writing careers if we want anybody to know about our work. But
Right.
it is, we have a tendency, at least I do. I won't say everyone, but I do. I have a tendency to follow marketers' trends and what they say is the way to get attention. I will follow that. And, my apologies to anyone out there who's been offended by my most recent foray into touting my work. I apologize. I'm about to shut up and sit down. So, okay, so that's the most difficult thing about the writing life for you. Now, what do you find to be the best? I mean, what do you enjoy the most about it?
I love creating the stories. I love creating characters. To me, stories are always about characters. You can have a fantastic plot with all kinds of great twists and accelerating action and tension and everything like that. And if you don't care about the characters, then you really don't care if one of the characters gets killed or if some, what happens. So to me, it always starts with the characters, and I enjoy that aspect of writing, creating characters, and really, through the first draft, I'm always getting acquainted with that character and really learning who that character is at a more human level. And then when I go back for the second draft, then I'm really fleshing things out, because by the time I get done with the first one, now I know who that person is, and I go back and rewrite those earlier chapters, and they're so much richer by that point, because I do really have a better understanding of that character. I don't start with a full character biography. I have ideas of their biography, but I want to kind of see where it goes. And then once I learn how that character starts behaving, then I can go back and look at why they behave that way and fill things out.
Don't you find it interesting how you can write just one book after another, and they each have different characters, and they come to you and they're full blown? It's just like there's somebody that you knew that was in your head that you've never examined before until this story came to you, and now the perfect character is in your head. It's just kind of weird.
It is. And you always wonder how much of that character is you and how much of it is other people that are in your life or something you've seen somewhere, or, it's usually some sort of a composite there.
It is. It's almost like we create Frankensteins of everybody we know and all the different parts of our own personality.
Exactly.
Well, listen, we're getting down to the last little while of the show. Tom, it's been just a blast chatting with you tonight. And when I get down to the last part of my show, I like to ask my authors to give a piece of writing advice to an aspiring author out there. Tell them something you wish you had known when you got started.
It's not easy. It's not what you think it will be. It is much different than what you think it'll be. You think, wow, once I publish, that's it, and now I'm there. And now you're one step in the door when you're published. You're not there. There's so much more to it. And the big thing to me is, if you really have a passion for writing, then just write and keep writing and keep writing and submit and submit and submit. And if you're getting rejections, that's part of the process. And it's actually a good part of the process, because the more you get, eventually you'll start getting good enough that some of those rejections will have suggestions for you, and you'll start seeing something about your own writing in that, and you'll get better. I submitted for, a few years before I actually got something accepted, and I'm glad for it, because earlier drafts of the same book weren't as good. But I would do a round of submissions and then find out that there's my cat. Sorry about that. And then I'd go back and revamp that book and work on it some more, and then do it again. And eventually what came out was a much better book than what I thought was good initially.
Yeah, every book is different. They're just, you just have to keep trying. Every book is not going to be perfect. Every book is not going to be loved by everybody. And every book is not going to be a major success. We want them to. We have the dream to have it happen that way. But sometimes that's just not a realistic dream. But that doesn't mean anybody should quit. Never, ever quit. You agree with me, Tom?
Oh, absolutely. And if you're really a writer in heart, you won't quit, because you're there for the writing. You're not there for the money. You're not there for the publication. You're not there for any supposed fame or anything. You're there because you can't not write. And if you don't have that inside of you, that drive that I just need to keep creating and creating and creating, regardless if anybody ever sees it, then you're probably not really meant to do that anyways, because it's a lot of lonely hours by yourself, and you have to be passionate about it if you really, are going to succeed.
That's the truth. Well, Tom, it has been so much fun chatting with you tonight, and I want for you to let everybody know where they can find you online.
Absolutely. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. My name's Thom Reese, and Thom is spelled with an H, Thom, then Reese, like the peanut butter cups, Rees as in Sam, E. And you can find me on Facebook. Please friend me. I have 2 pages. One's just Thom Reese, and the other's Thom Reese Author. And then I'm on Twitter as well. You can check my page out at Speaking Volumes, my publisher, and that's speakingvolumes.us. And just go to speakingvolumes.us. Then under talent, you'll find authors. Then just go down to my name and click on it. You'll see all of my books there. And I've got another one coming out in a few weeks here. So I'm very busy, and we're going.
That's awesome. We did not get around to talking about what's coming for you. What is the title of the new book? Have you titled it yet?
Yes. Well, actually, Speaking Volumes has contracted me to do a Dracula trilogy.
Far out.
So the very first one's the Dracula Journals Dark Decades is the first one. And that is out at the end of this month. I'm anxiously awaiting to see the cover. I think I'll probably see it tomorrow or the next day. And it'll be out soon. And then there's 2 more to follow. I'm writing the second one right now.
That is so fantastic. Well, congratulations. That's kudos to you, because that's going to be some major undertaking.
Yes.
If you get the cover art and you want to include it in the blog post, send it to me. I'll be glad to include it. This show should go live on Tuesday.
Very good. I'll do that. Thank you.
All right, Tom, that's going to do it for us tonight. I'm going to wrap up this episode. This has been episode 69 of Writer Groupie. Thank you guys for turning in. We'll check you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of Writer Groupie. For booking information, show notes, and more, visit writergroupie.net.